Good morning, everyone. I'm very excited today. This is the 52nd edition of our podcast, Ars Boni, and it's one I'm specifically proud of because it's the 52nd for Ars Boni, but in a way, the very first one for Ars Aequi, which is the new podcast that we will provide as a department, but it will not be the department because the department, unfortunately, doesn't do the work. It will be two people mainly in charge of this. And I'm very proud and very excited to introduce them to you and to talk to them about the thoughts behind all this and the goals that they and we want to achieve, and about the differences between Ars Boni and Ars Aequi and what we have in common. So that's really exciting. And the two people who are with me here are the host of the new podcast. It's Tima Anbana on the one hand and Paul Eberstaller on the other hand. Both of them working with me at the department, with both of them lawyers, but with a very different and interesting background in both cases. So good to have you here, Tima. So good to have you here, Paul. How are you?
Fine,
good,
thanks.
thank you.
Yeah, good. So let us start perhaps with what exactly is Ars Aequi. Tima, perhaps give us an overview about what you are planning to do here.
Sure. So Ars Aequi is going to be kind of the junior version of Ars Boni. What we really want to do is discuss interesting societal topics that meet at the intersection of law and technology. And we want to do this in an easy way for listeners to consume. So Ars Aequi is not going to really focus on high-level legal conversations. It's going to be more conversations that general internet users and the general public will be interested in. And we're going to try to explain things a lot more, explain legal concepts, how they affect people, and just have kind of engaging conversations about things like that in an easy to understand and easy to consume way.
Yeah. So Paul, who is the ideal listener then? Who is the target audience?
I mean, the target audience is everybody interested in what is going on or how the internet is shaped and how technology is shaped. So this may be from a political perspective. So how is IT law influencing the internet? How is this changing how we interact? And on the other hand, also to influence or to be able to discuss this and maybe influence these decisions, how they're made and how we as a society want these things to be governed.
So it's law students, but not only law students. It's the general public interested in legal and technological developments.
Exactly. You don't need to be a lawyer for this podcast. We try to not really structure this like a lecture where we start with the definitions and go on with a general overview over a legal area, but rather look at the problem and look at different legal aspects, how the law is tackling this and what issues arise from this.
Yeah. Tima, how does that fit into your day-to-day work? I mean, what is this something that is completely separate from what you do at the department, or is it something that comes together with your day-to-day work? And in how far does that fit to your general interest as a lawyer?
I think the podcast complements a lot of what I do and a lot of what we all do at the department, because the department is really focused on legal issues that arise in the online and digital space. So for example, I am working on two projects, and one of the projects has to do with e-health and kind of online medical records and things like that. So there's a lot of legal questions dealing with data protection, data security, data privacy, things like that. And I feel like those are definitely going to be concepts that we're going to be talking about through different avenues and in different ways in the podcast. And so in that way, my work on the day-to-day is complementary to what we talk about. And also I think the podcast kind of feeds into my other side, my less legal side, the part of me that likes to chat, the part of me that is interested in public speaking and engaging with people. So I think it's like putting two different aspects of me together, and it's really fun, actually.
Yeah, Paul. you being an Austrian with an Austrian legal background, now in this podcast working with Tima, who is from South Africa and who has a degree from the Netherlands, what is the main is there any main difference in working style or in how Tima prioritizes subjects, for example, in comparison with the typical Austrian lawyer, or is it just the same?
I would say that there's a different approach here, simply because I am very focused on A, Austrian law, and B, European law. And pretty much everything outside of the EU, maybe the US, not existing. So this is really the focus. I felt like the first time being confronted with this, more or less. So we have one example, for instance, in the first episode is a Singapore law, which is nothing really I would have looked up, for example, or really I would have gone into this research a completely different way. And I think this is interesting also in the podcast, because we are kind of talking about what we want to talk about and are structuring this, but not really like giving each other every detail. So we kind of in this conversation learn something new from each other as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it also helps that we have these different backgrounds, because we want the podcast to be international and we want it to be something that people outside of the EU can consume. I definitely want it to be something that Africans will enjoy, and Africans will get an opportunity to learn about the EU, and hopefully Europeans who watch will get the opportunity to learn about what's going on outside of Europe. So I think Paul and I are a good mix in the sense that I bring a little bit of something different, and he brings massive amount of knowledge about the EU and the regulatory framework here. So I think it works. I think it works really well.
And are you planning to bring in people from other areas of the world, or will it be just the two of you, at least at the beginning, talking with each other?
So we do intend to have guests in the future. We've talked about having a series that's dedicated, like an Africa series, where we would bring other Africans in the similar space that what we are, to come and have different conversations about what's going on the continent in terms of the legal developments in data protection and things like that. So those are definitely things that we are going to do in the podcast. It won't just be Paul and I every single time.
Yeah. So at the beginning, it's just the two of you, and you start with a topic that is obviously of eminent importance to all of us at the moment, which is about, who wants to explain to me what exactly it is about? Who wants to announce it?
It is fake news, which obviously is a topic that is quite known and is a current topic. And this is also why we wanted to do it, on the one hand, because of coronavirus and fake news in this area, but also because of Trump being marked as fake news on Twitter, for example, or Facebook now 1 or 2 days ago, deleting posts by Donald Trump. So this really raises the question, what can Twitter do about this? What can Facebook do about this? And how do we all want fake news to be governed? Because there's an inherent conflict between one person wanting to share information and the freedom of expression, and on the other hand, protecting the public from wrong, misleading, potentially harmful information.
And also, we thought fake news was an interesting topic. Like Paul said, in the context of the coronavirus, we've seen governments really clamp down on the spread of disinformation about the virus. We've seen governments take what some people describe as extreme regulatory measures. And we've also seen how in many countries, these regulatory measures have affected the media and the media's freedom of the press. So these are kind of ideas that we wanted to discuss, and we split it up into 3 different episodes. So episode 1 is an introduction to fake news. We talk about the definition of fake news and the fact that there is no universal definition. So we look at how different jurisdictions are dealing with that. And then in episode 2, we focus on the media and how fake news regulation has affected freedom of the press. And then in episode 3, the final episode, we look at how platforms are dealing with this and what platforms are doing in the space of regulating their platforms by themselves and controlling the spread of fake news, as well as allowing people to essentially express themselves freely.
Yeah, and you will do this from a worldwide perspective. So it will be Singapore and Austria and South Africa. And so that means that it must be a very, I would say, a global view and a very, very open view, right? It won't be too much into the details then. It will be more for the general understanding of the issue, right?
Exactly. So we won't go into, specific sections or specific laws and really unpack legislation and, things like that. But we will talk about, different cases that have gone on. We will talk about regulation. We will introduce the audience to kind of what's going on in this area.
Yeah. Which brings me to the question how you will communicate with your audience, because probably I would assume if you have such a broad topic with a worldwide perspective, there will be some people from somewhere in the world trying to react to what you're doing. So what are the main channels you will use for communication with your listeners?
So obviously we are very much looking forward to the conversation and to the input and to the discussion on all of this. I recently only noticed that it's not really common for podcasts to have comments, because this is something that videos do all the time, but in most podcast apps, there's not a possibility. So on the one hand, we are publishing this on YouTube, so you can write us a YouTube comment. Also, obviously, on our different social media channels. So, for example, on Twitter and all the others for the department or our personal ones. Plus, there's also email. I guess you could also send us a letter if you want.
If you are, yeah.
Really
I think the department.
Email us.
I think the department also has a fax machine still.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think so. Yeah, I needed it once. Yeah, we do, but it's just software. But still, at least we have a number for this. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So all the typical channels then. But would you expect your audience to have an impact on what you're doing? So is that something you're considering, to bring in, I don't know, listeners' voices or something like this?
I think that would be great, because we do want it to feel like an interactive conversation. So we don't want it to be lecture style or just two people having conversations within themselves and only expressing their own opinions. I think at some point, when our listenership has grown and when we've kind of gotten into the swing of podcasting and interacting with people online, then it would be something that we would like to do. We would like to get listeners to come on, especially listeners who maybe have been affected by a topic that we discussed in a specific way. I think that would be an important aspect of the podcast in the future, definitely.
I see. And the platforms you are using are those that I also use for Ars Boni, right? So YouTube is one of the platforms, although it's audio only at the moment, right? So there's no video. Why this choice? Why audio only and why YouTube?
Video obviously is harder to produce. We've seen your post about your lights, for example, Nicholas, and all the work that goes into coordinating this. And especially with audio only, it's easier to edit this, to cut this, to bring different takes together to structure this more. And so this was, as a first step, audio only, and you can really listen to us and concentrate on our voices.
Yeah, and I think also the way Paul and I consume podcasts, we prefer to consume podcasts in kind of an audio only fashion. So you just have your earphones in, you're on the train, you're at the gym, and you're listening to the podcast. So we kind of wanted to create that atmosphere where people can listen wherever they are. And so doing it in the audio form was really just the best way, because that's the way that we enjoy consuming content.
Yeah, and you have such a cool visualization on YouTube. I really admire that. What exactly is this, Paul, and how did you do this?
So for those of you that haven't seen our introduction episode yet, we have our pictures on there and an animation for when each of us talk, and like a little waveform. The thought behind this was that it sometimes gets confusing. I mean, in our situation, it's not that bad, but if it's like more than 3 or 4 people, it gets confusing who is talking, and you can't really imagine their faces. So at least for YouTube, where we have the option of having the video and having the picture there, we wanted to give you an impression who is talking, and more of a personal touch, really.
Yeah, and how did you do it?
I mean, it's an animation in motion. Is the program is called, and there it is more or less a feature to animate certain elements as the audio more or less moves, and then it was just figuring out how to divide us two talking and splitting this track up, so so you see who is talking.
Yeah, and it looks very nice. I really like it. I also like the sound, by the way, and also the music that you're using. So yeah, there's a lot more of technical input and technical workload that you're taking than I'm taking here at the moment for Ars Boni, because this is, it's always the same setup, and I just click on the camera button and I'm online if I want to. Whereas you need a lot more of time, I would assume, for producing those different episodes. Why are you doing it in this way? Because you think that it's more user-friendly, or that the audience will grow more quickly, or what is the basic thinking behind this, instead of just simply taking the raw audio file and put it online quickly?
I mean, to be really honest, we just wanted it to look good. and that was really the idea. We just Paul was like, oh, I have an idea that I think will look really cool. And then he showed it to me and I was like, that's amazing, let's do that. So it wasn't very strategic. It was just Paul being really creative and doing the amazing stuff that he does. And then it just worked out. And that was
and team up.
We hope it makes our followership grow. Yeah, that would be great.
And also it is quite fun to do this, and we talked about this. We can really invest some time into this, and it's quite fun, and we like the outcome. So
so as I said before, that's one of the problems if you work at the university, that if you don't care, and if you don't watch yourself, you end up like me, being a 52-year-old boy still playing around with his toys, right? And that looks a little bit like this in some way, but it looks really beautiful, and I really like it. How did you find the Singapore case, by the way? Was that a coincidence, or did you strategically look into different areas of the world? Or are you planning to look strategically into different areas of the world? That would be the second question then.
So with the Singapore case, it was a little bit strategic, because I had read about it a while ago when the legislation came out. I had read about it somewhere, and then when we were talking about doing fake news, it came up again to me, and I went and I researched the law, and I researched some of the criticisms that people have had on how strict their fake news legislation is, and how it covers a wide variety of different modes of online communication, including text messaging and things like that. So it was something that I heard about before, and then I thought it would fit really well into this first series. And to answer your second question, we do definitely intend to look at different jurisdictions and to bring an international approach. I think the way we have done it in the first series, and how we'll probably continue to do it, is through comparison. So we look at what the EU does, and then we compare or contrast this to what's happening in Singapore, to show people that it's not one and the same thing. So if you live in a different country, the definition of fake news or the legal definition of anything might be different, and that will have a different impact on you and how you navigate, using the internet or creating content or anything like that.
I also think that the first point you made, that we just find stuff online, and then when talking about it, remembering this, also really makes it fit quite well with what we're doing at the department and what we're interested in general, because we are confronted with so many different things going on, just because we are in this IT law bubble. So anytime we are discussing a topic, we remember something and have read a court decision on this or a new law on something. So this is really, good combination.
Yeah, I mean, even on the department Slack group, everyone's constantly exchanging different things that they've read or different court decisions in different jurisdictions. And I think that's what makes it really perfect that we're doing this type of podcast, because we are in this space and we do care about this. And this is the work that we do every single day. And so when we talk about it, we're coming from a place of real passion and real interest in the topic.
Mm-hmm. When you're talking about the IT law bubble, is there any podcast out there which is similar to the one that you are providing, or are you the only one you are aware of in this segment of the market?
I wouldn't say we're the only one. I think there are a lot of legal podcasts that kind of do this, but not maybe as focused as we want to do it. And I think a lot of the legal podcasts are more catered towards people with a legal background and people so they're having really high level legal conversations with legal implications and really going into depth. And I think for us, we are more looking at making this something that's more commercially consumable for everyone. So even if you're not a lawyer, you can still watch our podcast and gain a lot of insights that you might not have originally had.
And you will publish one episode every 2 weeks. Is that the way you're planning to do it?
Exactly. So the first one is being released today after this episode of Ars Boni airs. And after that, every 2 weeks with series-based. So we have this first series on fake news where we have 3 episodes, and then followed by different other series with other topics with more episodes about different subtopics.
And the topic will always be something like an abstract legal problem. So something like, I don't know, data protection or intellectual property right or something, and then drilling down in different episodes. So will it be more driven by, I don't know, recent cases or problems that are discussed in the media? So what exactly will the approach look like that you will choose? Or are you not sure yet?
Oh, no, we definitely are going to more create topics based on what's going on in the world around us. So headlines in the media, recent cases, recent decisions, interesting things that come up and that do have a legal implication or have a legal basis, then we'll take those topics and discuss them. So I feel like that's why it will be really interesting for people who aren't lawyers, because they will have maybe heard about this problem in the media or read something about it online, and then they can come to us and we will explain it and kind of unpack it in a way that everyone can understand.
Yeah, and that's also the reason why someone should listen to you, right? Because it's then the legal perspective on something which is already intensely debated out there.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's interesting. Let me just ask a very stupid question, which is not stupid because you know the answer, but perhaps some of our listeners don't. And it's not stupid because you need to know Latin in order to understand this. And I know that not many people speak Latin. Why Ars Aequi? So what exactly is this and where does it come from?
So the name original, I mean, it's closely related to Ars Boni, obviously. It comes from Roman law, where at a very prominent position in Roman law, it is described, so the law is described as the arts of the good and the equitable. And so you are now covering the good and we are now covering the equitable, apparently. So this is more or less the history of the name. And when you started Ars Boni, it was more or less clear that we have to be Ars Aequi then.
Yeah. I had by the way, I had a very funny misunderstanding, or not really a misunderstanding, more a joke with my son on this, because when I told him that this is going to be called Ars Aequi, he said something about that it will be about the law of the horse or so, right? And that's very funny because there is a very, very prominent article about whether or not IT law is a specific legal discipline. And this article is named The Law of the Horse. So, it debates the question whether IT law or law and digitalization is something like the law of the horse because everything is in it and nothing, right? So it's not about the horse, it's about equity, right? So
It's about
maybe we could do a series on horse law.
Yeah.
and just remove the A at the beginning.
Yeah. The quotation is from the digest of Justinian, and it's just the very first sentence: "Jus est ars boni et aequi." So it's a very prominent quote, as you know. But the term equity, however, perhaps Tima, this is something that you would like to comment if you wish. Equity is something which is a prominent term and a prominent legal concept in all the non-civil law jurisdictions all over the world. Will that play a role in what you are planning to do?
I mean, I think it definitely will. We will talk a lot about, in our opinion, what we would feel would be just or what we feel would be equitable in a specific context, right? So for example, if we take fake news, we had a lot of conversations of what we thought platforms should do in order to be just or to be fair to their users, and also to uphold the duty on them to make sure that false information is not spread on their platform. So I think the concept of equity and justice and goodness will definitely tie into a lot of the conversations that we have, because at the end of the day, that's the overall purpose of the law, right? So that's what the law is aiming to achieve. And we will kind of critique if the law is doing this in the right way or if it's going in the wrong direction.
Yeah. And that's an approach, Paul. I think you share my view, which is not really the typical civil law Austrian/Central European approach, right? So
yeah, not at all. So this would be way too fuzzy and not tangible enough, I would say, for is my feeling. For the civil law approach.
Yeah, in law school, when we did topics like constitutional law and things like that, these were the conversations that we had all the time. You know, you would read cases from judges where they discuss, you know, why is something equitable? Why is this just? And what should the law aim to achieve in this aspect? So this is kind of something this is the way I've always viewed law. So for me, working in a civil law country, it's a bit different to see like, oh, there are different jurisdictions where these conversations are not as widely had as where I come from. So I'll be bringing that element, and I think Paul will bring more of the structure.
I think it's even more extreme here in continental Europe, because it's not only that you do not really discuss this intensely in class, it's even something that you normally try to avoid, because it's a good sign if you need to start to write on something like this in your exam. It's a good sign that you have a problem in answering the question, right? Because it's normally not the thing that people would expect you to write or to think or to argue, right? And that's in my view very interesting to see how different that is seen outside Europe in some ways, right? Or outside continental Europe in some ways. And Austria perhaps is even more extreme here because of its positivistic history, and Vienna then perhaps even the most extreme of the extreme ones because of its positivistic history that is still here on a daily basis also in teaching and what people think. But at the same time, when you start thinking about something like fake news, there's not too much to be seen in the law, right? So you need some kind of additional thinking on top of this. Yeah. So I assume I will learn a lot from this, and you will learn a lot from each other, and hopefully also from your audience. Is there anything your audience urgently needs to know to find you on the internet or to understand what you're doing?
I think what everyone needs to know is that the first episode will be released today, right after this, so at 12 o'clock. And then it will be on all platforms. It will be on Spotify, it will be on SoundCloud, and of course it will be here on YouTube. And yeah, we would just love everyone to listen and engage with us. Let us know what you think. Write us a fax. Let us know what you think about the topic. And if you have any ideas on things that are happening around the world that you want more of a legal perspective on, that you want more insights on, or you want us to discuss, we would love to hear from you.
yeah, I can only agree. Listen to the podcast and tell us what you think and what your input is, and tell us your ideas on what we should do next and what we should do differently, and also what we have done well.
Yes.
Absolutely, absolutely. That will also be my role. I hope that I will be very supportive in telling you what you've done well. And just let me emphasize, because I had the privilege to. I'm probably one of the very few who know already the first 3 episodes, right? So I have the privilege. I have, and I will not. I will not tell you now that what they are about in detail, but I want to share with you that I like all 3 of them, and I find them really excellent. And both from a content perspective as well as from a technical perspective, how you are delivering the message you want to deliver. So it's really something I very much appreciate, and I'm very much looking forward to learning from you, like many of your listeners, on both sides, on the content side and also on the technological part of this. And it's a very nice journey that will start in 30 minutes. So trust me and stay with us on this journey.
Thank you.
Thank you,
And
Tima.
thanks for your support, Klaus. You've been really supportive and helpful throughout this process. So thank you for that.
My pleasure. Really, believe me, I do this for very egoistic reasons because I like the project. You know, it's another very beautiful, unfortunately a little bit time consuming, but very beautiful project. I have the privilege to see a little bit more in detail. So thank you to both of you. Really, thank you. And thank you to our listeners for joining us on this journey, and all the best, and have a wonderful weekend, and stay healthy and stay interested in what we are doing. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.